There was a time when I believed I knew you completely. I admired your confidence, your calm smile, and the way everyone seemed to respect you. From a distance, you looked fearless. You looked like someone who never doubted themselves, never cried, and never carried the weight of the world on their shoulders. I built an image of you in my mind, an image so perfect that I forgot one important truth. Every person has a story hidden behind their smile. The day I finally saw the real you changed everything. It wasn't a dramatic moment. There were no loud arguments or shocking secrets. It was something much quieter. I noticed the silence in your eyes. For the first time, I realized that your smile wasn't hiding happiness, it was hiding pain. You laughed so others wouldn't ask questions. You stayed strong because you thought nobody would understand your struggles. That moment completely changed the way I looked at you. I didn't see weakness. I saw courage. I didn't see failure. I saw someone who had survived battles that nobody else knew existed. You weren't the perfect person I had imagined. You were something much more beautiful. You were real. The world teaches us to admire perfection, but life teaches us to value honesty. When you finally stopped pretending to be okay, you gave me the greatest gift anyone can receive, the truth. And the truth was enough. You didn't need expensive words or a perfect life to impress me. You only needed to be yourself. That day, I understood something I had never understood before. Love isn't about finding someone without flaws. Love is about choosing someone even after seeing every flaw, every fear, every scar, and every broken piece. The real you wasn't disappointing. The real you was unforgettable. From that moment on, I stopped loving the person I had imagined. I started loving the person standing right in front of me. The person who sometimes feels lost. The person who quietly carries responsibilities. The person who worries about everyone else before thinking about themselves. The person who still believes in kindness even after being hurt. That is the person worth loving. Maybe all of us are hiding behind masks. Maybe we're all afraid that if someone discovers who we truly are, they'll walk away. But sometimes, the opposite happens. Sometimes, the moment someone sees the real you is the exact moment they decide to stay forever. And that's exactly what happened to me. Because after finally seeing the real you, I realized you were never the person I imagined. You were far better, far stronger, far kinder, and far more deserving of love than I had ever known. The more I watched you, the more I realized how wrong I had been. For so long, I believed confidence meant you had no fears. I thought your silence meant peace. I thought your smile meant everything in your life was perfect. But I was only seeing the surface. One evening, after everyone had gone home, I noticed you sitting alone. The room was quiet. Your phone rested beside you, untouched. Your eyes weren't focused on anything. They looked distant, as if your mind had traveled somewhere your body couldn't follow. When you realized I was standing there, you smiled. The same smile everyone else admired. But this time, I could see right through it. It wasn't happiness. It was protection. You had become so good at pretending that even your own heart had forgotten what it felt like to be honest. I wanted to ask what was wrong. Instead, I simply sat beside you. Sometimes people don't need questions. Sometimes they just need someone willing to stay. Minutes passed without either of us speaking. Then, almost in a whisper, you said something I will never forget. Do you ever get tired of pretending you're okay? Those words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were real. For the first time, I wasn't listening to the confident person everyone admired. I was listening to the exhausted soul hidden underneath. You told me how people only expected strength from you, how every mistake felt like a failure, how every success only raised expectations even higher. You said you smiled because people felt comfortable seeing you happy. No one wanted to see your tears. No one wanted to hear your fears. So you buried them, day after day, year after year, until even you forgot what freedom felt like. I sat there quietly, realizing how unfair the world can be. We celebrate people for looking strong, but we rarely ask how much pain it took to become that strong. That night changed something inside me. I stopped trying to admire your perfect image. Instead, I admired your courage to finally tell the truth. You weren't asking for sympathy. You weren't asking anyone to fix your life. You simply wanted someone to understand. And for the first time, I did. I understood that even the strongest hearts become tired. Even the brightest smiles can hide the darkest nights. Even the people who encourage everyone else sometimes need someone to encourage them. As I looked at you, I realized something beautiful. Your scars didn't make you less valuable. They proved you had survived. Every disappointment had made you wiser. Every heartbreak had made you kinder. Every failure had taught you humility. The person sitting beside me wasn't broken. They were beautifully human. That was the moment I silently made a promise. I would never ask you to be perfect again. I would never expect you to carry every burden alone. If you wanted to laugh, I would laugh with you. If you wanted to cry, I would stay beside you. If you wanted silence, I would respect it. Because real love isn't about fixing someone. It's about making sure they never have to face life's storms alone. That evening, as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, I realized something I wish I had understood much earlier. The greatest act of love isn't saying, I love the person everyone sees. It's saying, I love the person nobody else notices. And in that quiet moment, without another word, I knew our story had only just begun. That night, after we said goodbye, I couldn't sleep. Your words kept replaying in my mind. Do you ever get tired of pretending you're okay? I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how many people had walked past your pain without ever noticing it. Maybe I had done the same. Maybe we all do. We become so distracted by appearances that we forget every smile has a story, and every heart carries a burden invisible to the world. Around midnight, I reached for my notebook. I wasn't planning to write anything, but somehow the words found me. Dear you, I finally understand. Not everything, not completely, but enough to know that I judged you before I truly knew you. I admired your confidence without realizing how much courage it took to wear it every day. I praised your strength without asking how heavy your burdens had become. And for that, I'm sorry. You deserved someone who looked beyond the surface. Someone who cared more about your heart than your image. Someone who noticed the silence behind your smile. I wish I had been that person sooner. I stopped writing for a moment. A tear landed on the page. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I felt guilty. Guilty for believing the version of you that the world applauded. The polished version. The fearless version. The version that never existed. I continued writing. You once told me that people only remember you when they need something. I didn't know what to say then, but I know now. People often love what you can give them. Very few people love you simply because you're you. I want to be one of those few. I don't need perfection. I don't need endless success. I don't need you to smile every day. I only need your honesty. Because honesty creates trust. And trust creates a love that survives every storm. As dawn slowly approached, I finished the letter. I folded it carefully, but I never gave it to you. Not because I changed my mind, because I realized something important. Some letters aren't meant to be delivered. They're meant to change the person who writes them. That letter changed me. It taught me to listen more than I speak, to understand before I judge, to stay instead of walking away when life becomes difficult. The next morning, I saw you again. You smiled, the same gentle smile, but this time, I smiled differently too. Not because I believed everything was suddenly okay, but because I finally knew the truth. Healing doesn't happen overnight. Trust isn't rebuilt in a single conversation, and broken hearts don't become whole after one kind moment. Real healing happens slowly. One conversation, one honest tear, one act of kindness, one day at a time. As we walked together that morning, neither of us mentioned the previous night. We didn't need to. Some conversations continue without words. And ours had already begun. For the first time, I wasn't trying to understand the person everyone admired. I was learning to love the person only a few had ever truly seen. And I knew one thing with complete certainty. No matter what tomorrow brought, I would never look at you the same way again, because I had finally seen the real you, and it was the greatest privilege of my life. There was a time when I believed love was about finding someone extraordinary, someone perfect, someone who never made mistakes, someone who always knew the right words to say. But life has a strange way of teaching us the lessons we never expected to learn. And you became my greatest lesson. The day I finally saw the real you, I thought everything would change. I was right. Everything did change, just not in the way I imagined. I didn't stop loving you. I started loving you for the very first time. Because the person I had fallen in love with before wasn't real. It was an idea, a beautiful imagination, a perfect picture I had painted inside my own mind. But pictures never tell the whole story. I need to tell you something I've been holding inside for a long time. Not because I was afraid, not because the words weren't there, but because some things feel too sacred to say out loud. And what I feel when I think about you, yes, you, the one reading this right now, is one of those things. I've been sitting with this for a while, turning it over in my hands, like something fragile. Something I didn't want to break by saying it too quickly or too carelessly. Because you deserve more than careless. You deserve someone who chooses every word the way you choose every person you let into your heart. Slowly, carefully, with intention. And so, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm choosing every single word for you. Well, I want you to know something that most people will never say to you directly. You are not ordinary. I know people say that all the time, and it sounds like just another nice thing to hear. But I don't mean it the way other people mean it. I mean it the way someone means it, when they've been paying attention, when they've been watching quietly, noticing the small things, the things you think nobody sees. I see them. I've always seen them. Lolace, I see the way you carry love, like it's the most natural thing in the world, even when life has given you every reason to put it down. I see the way you show up for people, for moments, for feelings, even when you're exhausted, even when your own heart is somewhere between breaking and healing, and you still find a way to smile, because someone else needed to see one. I see all of that, and I want you to know that what you do, the quiet and constant way you love, it's not invisible. It never was. But here's what I really want to tell you. What I've been building up to since the first word of this letter. There is a kind of love that most people spend their whole lives searching for and never actually find. Not because they're not worthy of it, not because the world is cruel, but because most people don't even know what it looks like. They've been handed so many imitations, versions of love that felt real for a moment and then faded, or that burned hot and then burned out entirely, that they've started to confuse love with something else. With convenience, with habit, with someone who just happened to stay. But you have always known the difference, haven't you? Deep down in that quiet place inside yourself that you don't show everyone, you've always known. You've always been able to feel the difference between someone who was there and someone who was truly present. Between someone who said the words and someone who meant them so completely that you could feel it before they even opened their mouth. That knowing that sensitivity is one of the most beautiful things about you. And it's also the thing that has made love harder for you. Because once you know what real feels like, the imitations don't just disappoint you, they hollow you out. And I think you've been hollowed out before. I think you've given pieces of yourself to people who didn't even realize what they were holding. And I think you've smiled through some of it, pretended it was fine, told yourself you were okay when you were anything but the love. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because I want you to know that I understand. Not in the shallow way that people say I understand when they're really just waiting for their turn to talk. I mean it in the way that sits with you in silence. In the way that doesn't ask you to explain yourself, or justify your feelings, or get over it faster. I understand because I've been paying attention to you. And what I see is someone who has loved beautifully in circumstances that didn't deserve beauty. I want to ask you something. And I want you to really let yourself feel it before you answer. When was the last time someone made you feel completely safe? Not just physically, but emotionally. The kind of safe where you didn't have to edit yourself, where you could say the strange, vulnerable, half-finished things that live in the back of your mind, and instead of being looked at like you were too much, you were looked at like you were exactly right. Like every complicated, layered, contradictory part of you was not just tolerated but genuinely treasured. Oh, if you had to think about it for more than a second, then that tells me something. And what it tells me is that you have been giving a quality of love that you have not yet been fully given back. And that is something I cannot sit with quietly. That is something that breaks me a little bit. Because you, of all people, you deserve to be loved the way you love, completely, patiently, with all the lights on and nothing hidden. Komune, I think about you sometimes in the in-between moments. The ones that don't make it into anyone's highlight reel. The early morning quiet before the day starts, asking things of you. The late nights, when your thoughts get louder than everything else, and you're lying there just feeling things with no one to feel them with. Those are the moments I think about. Those are the moments I wish I could reach through whatever distance exists between us and just remind you that you are not alone in this. That someone is thinking about you. That someone sees the full picture of you, not just the parts you've decided are presentable. You've been brave in ways that never got celebrated. You've rebuilt yourself quietly, without applause, without anyone handing you a map. You've had days that knocked you completely sideways and you found your footing again. Not because it was easy, but because there is something in you that refuses to stay down. That resilience, the quiet, fierce kind, that doesn't announce itself, that is one of the most extraordinary things I have ever witnessed in a person. And I need you to know that I don't take it for granted. I never have, Tor, but I also want to tell you this gently because I mean it gently. You are allowed to not be resilient sometimes. You are allowed to fall apart. You are allowed to need something. You are allowed to want love, not as a thing you give endlessly outward, but as something you receive. Something that comes to you softly and steadily and says, "Here, let me carry some of this. Let me be the place you rest." You don't have to earn that. You don't have to be strong enough, or healed enough, or finished enough. You are allowed to be loved right now, exactly as you are in the middle of everything you're still figuring out. Or, I want to be the voice that tells you that. I want to be the one that says, I'm not waiting for the final version of you, the one you're building toward, the one you think you have to become before you're worth loving the way you want to be loved. I don't want that version more than I want this one, the one who is still learning, the one who is sometimes unsure and sometimes afraid, and sometimes brilliant and sometimes overwhelmed. This version, you, right now, took off. Because here's what I know about you that you might not fully know about yourself yet. There is something about the way you experience the world that is rare. You feel things deeply, not in the dramatic, performative way, in the quiet, permanent way. Things land in you, and they stay. A song, a look, a moment of unexpected kindness. You carry things, and I know that can feel like a weight sometimes, like you're always absorbing more than your share of the world's emotion. But it is also the thing that makes being loved by you feel like the most significant experience in a person's life. Because when you love someone, you love all of them. You remember the little things. You show up in ways they didn't even know they needed. You make people feel seen in a way that some people spend their entire lives chasing. That is not small. That is everything. That is everything. And I need you to hear this next part very clearly. What you give, the depth of it, the consistency of it, the way you love, even when it's difficult and inconvenient and quietly breaking your heart, that is not too much. I know someone told you it was. Or maybe no one said it directly, but you felt it. The way people pulled back when you got too real, or changed the subject when you got too emotional, or made you feel like needing more than surface level was somehow a flaw. It isn't. It never was. You are not too much. You have just been giving everything you have to people who were not built to hold it, and that is their limitation, not yours. I want to hold it, all of it, every heavy, beautiful, complicated piece of what it is to be you. I don't want the edited version. I don't want the version that's already figured everything out and doesn't need anything. I want the real one, the one who texts back at 2 a.m. because her mind won't stop. The one who cries at things she can't fully explain. The one who laughs too loud sometimes and apologizes for it, even though there is absolutely nothing to apologize for. The one who second guesses herself in quiet moments and then does the brave thing anyway. Oh, that is the person I'm writing this for. That is the person I am speaking to right now. And I want you to know that I think about what it would feel like to sit across from you in the kind of quiet that doesn't need to be filled, where we could just exist in the same space, and it would feel like the most natural thing in the world, where nothing had to be performed or explained, where you could say what was really on your mind, and I would lean in closer instead of pulling away, where you could be soft and certain at the same time, and I would look at you like you were the most extraordinary thing I had ever been allowed to be near, because that's what you are, and maybe no one has looked at you that way in a while. Maybe it's been so long that you've started to wonder if you imagined it was possible. I'm telling you it's possible. I'm telling you that you deserve that look. Every single day. There is something I've been wanting to say for so long, and I keep circling around it. Because once I say it, I can't take it back, and I don't want to take it back. But I also want to say it right. I want to say it in a way that lands the way it's meant to land. Not just as words, but as something you can feel. And what I want to say is this: you are loved. Not in the distant, theoretical way. Not in the someone out there cares about you way that people say when they don't know what else to offer. But specifically, intentionally. In the way that knows your name and knows your laugh and knows the face you make when something touches you more than you expected it to. In the way that has been paying attention. In the way that thinks about you in the quiet in-between moments and feels something warm and certain and real. You are loved in the way you have always deserved to be loved. And I need you to stay with that for a second. Not just let it pass through you the way compliments sometimes do when you're not sure you believe them. Let it settle. Let it sit somewhere permanent inside you. Because it belongs there. Because it's true. Because you with all your depth and your softness and your strength and your beautiful aching realness, you are someone worth every word of this, and I have so much more to say to you. I don't think you realize what happens to the people around you when you walk into a room. Not in the showy, dramatic way. Not the way people describe someone who demands attention or fills a space with noise. I mean the quieter version of that. The version where something shifts, where the air feels a little different, where people who were only half present suddenly become fully present, without even knowing why. That's what you do. That's the effect you have on the world just by existing in it. And I wonder sometimes if you've ever been told that. If anyone has ever stopped long enough to say, hey, I noticed what you just did there. I noticed the way you changed things just by showing up. Or Dega. I don't think they have, and that bothers me more than I know how to say, because you've been showing up your whole life, quietly, consistently, with so much of yourself poured into every single moment, and the world has a way of taking that kind of showing up for granted. It has a way of leaning on the people who are always there, the ones who never make a scene about their own needs, the ones who absorb difficulty, and still manage to make everyone around them feel okay. The world leans on those people the hardest, and thanks them the least. And I think you know exactly what I mean. I think you felt that particular kind of tired, that has nothing to do with sleep, and everything to do with giving more than you've been given back for longer than anyone should have to. Birbiyati. I want to talk about that tiredness for a moment. Not to dwell in it, but because I think it's important that someone finally names it, without asking you to get over it, or reframe it, or find the silver lining. I just want to sit with it beside you for a second and say, I know. I know you've carried things that were heavy. I know there have been seasons in your life that felt less like seasons and more like sentences. Like something you were just surviving rather than living. And I know that you didn't always have the luxury of falling apart the way you needed to. Because there were people depending on you, or things that needed doing, or a version of yourself you felt responsible for maintaining, so that everyone else could feel stable. I know that you have held yourself together in rooms where you were quietly falling apart. I know that you have laughed at the right moments and said the right things and made it look like everything was fine when everything was very much not fine. And I know that part of you became so good at that, so practiced at keeping it all together on the outside, that sometimes even you lost track of what was actually happening underneath. Sometimes you couldn't tell anymore where the performance of being okay ended and the reality of being okay began. And that specific kind of loneliness, the kind that lives right in the middle of a life that looks full, that is one of the saddest and most invisible things a person can experience. You have experienced it, and you have never once been fully met in it by someone who stayed. But I'm staying, right here, in this moment, in this letter, in this space between my words and your heart. I'm staying, and I need you to feel that. Not as a nice thing someone said, as something real, as something that belongs to you. Now let me tell you something else. Something I've been turning over for a while, because I wasn't sure how to say it without it sounding like just another thing people say. But here it is, as plainly and honestly as I can offer it. I've been waiting, not consciously, not in the way where you're sitting by a window looking out at the horizon with longing in your eyes, but in the quieter way, the way where you've gone about your life, done the things that needed doing, built things and lost things and rebuilt things. But somewhere underneath all of it, there has been this soft, persistent feeling that you are waiting for something to arrive. Something you can't always name, but can always feel the absence of. Like a chair left empty at a table that was set for more than one. I want to tell you what I think that thing is. I think it's permission. Not permission from the world. Not permission from the people in your life who have opinions about who you should be and how you should love and what you should want. But permission from someone who truly sees you to be everything you actually are. To be the version of yourself that exists before you've edited for the audience. The one who wants what she wants without apology. The one who loves how she loves without shrinking it down to a size that's more comfortable for everyone else. The one who takes up exactly the space she deserves to take up, which, I want to be very clear, is a lot of space. The kind of space that big hearts and deep souls and rare people are supposed to take up. You have been making yourself smaller for a long time. I can feel it in everything I know about you. The way you soften certain truths before you speak them, so they land more gently. The way you qualify your feelings before you share them, pre-apologizing for their size and weight. The way you've learned to introduce your needs as suggestions rather than needs. Because at some point you were taught, not always in words but in reactions, that needing things was somehow an inconvenience, that wanting more was somehow greedy, that the depth of what you felt was somehow a burden other people had to manage. But it wasn't, it isn't, and whoever taught you that, whether it was a person or an experience or 100 small moments stacked on top of each other over years, they were wrong. You are not a burden. You are not too much. You are not a problem to be managed. You are a person to be loved, fully, loudly, with everything turned all the way up. And I want to be the one who turns it all the way up with you. And I want to know the things that live in you that you've only ever half said out loud. The dreams that feel too big or too strange or too specific to share. Because what if someone looks at you funny or doesn't get it or worse gets it but doesn't care? I want to be the person you tell anyway. The one who doesn't just nod politely but actually leans in and says, tell me more, keep going, I want to hear all of it. Because I do. I want to hear all of it. Every unfiled thought, every half-formed hope, every memory you return to when you need to feel something good, every fear that visits you in the small hours when the world is quiet and your mind isn't. Bro, I want to know the music that gets inside you. The kind that doesn't just play in your ears, but somehow moves through your chest and changes your breathing. I want to know what you think about when your mind drifts during long drives or long silences. I want to know what made you the way you are, not just the big things, the obvious biographical facts, but the small things. The things that shaped the texture of who you became. The book you read at exactly the right age. The person who said something that cracked you open in a good way. The moment you first understood that the world was both harder and more beautiful than anyone had told you it would be. Daro, I want to know all of that, and then I want to know what comes next for you, in the specific, personal, just for you sense. Not the version you talk about in polite company, where everything is sensible and achievable and appropriately humble. The real version. The version where you let yourself want without limits. Where you let yourself imagine a life so full of meaning and beauty and love that it almost embarrasses you to think about it. That version. Tell me that one. Though the pocket, because I think you've been afraid to want it too loudly. I think you've learned to hold your biggest hopes a little loosely, a little quietly, like something you're not sure you're allowed to claim. Like if you say it too directly, too certainly. And I understand that. I understand the protective logic of it. When you've wanted things before and they didn't work out, when you've believed in things that fell apart, when you've loved people who didn't stay, it makes sense that some part of you learned to hold hope at arm's length. To want things but not too much. To believe but with one hand always on the door. It has just kept you from being fully reached, and you deserve to be fully reached. You deserve someone who comes all the way to where you actually are, not to the edge of where you've decided it's safe to stand. Someone who is not intimidated by the depth of you, but is instead drawn to it. Someone who looks at all of you, the light and the complicated and the uncertain and the achingly beautiful, and moves closer. That is not too much to want. That is the minimum. That is the floor, not the ceiling. And everything above it, the extraordinary, specific, once-in-a-lifetime kind of love that feels like coming home to a place you've never actually been, but somehow always known. That is available to you. It is not reserved for other people. It is not something you have to earn through enough suffering or enough patience or enough becoming. It is yours. It has always been yours. So I'm asking you to stop apologizing. Right now, in this moment, between my words and your heart, I'm asking you to let yourself want the whole thing. The love that calls you by name in the dark. The love that notices when something is off before you've said a word. The love that remembers. The love that chooses you not once, but every single day, not because it has to, but because even on the days when choosing is hard, it can't imagine choosing anything else. That love. I'm asking you to want it without qualification, without the footnote that says, but I know it's probably not realistic, without the hedge that says I'll be happy with whatever comes. Father one, you are allowed to know what you want. You are allowed to be specific about it. You are allowed to hold out for the love that feels like relief rather than work. And I am not saying that love is effortless. Nothing real ever is. But there is a difference between the effort of two people building something together, choosing each other through difficulty, because the foundation is real and worth protecting, and the effort of constantly trying to make someone fit who was never shaped for you in the first place. You have done enough of the second kind. More than enough. Dion, and I need you to know something about the way I see you when I think about all of this. When I picture you, not the idea of you, not some abstract version, but you, specifically as the person I'm speaking to right now, I feel something that is difficult to put into words, but that I'm going to try anyway because you deserve the attempt. Or, I feel like you are the kind of story that deserves to be told slowly, not rushed through, not summarized, not skipped to the end of. The kind of story where every chapter matters, even the hard ones. Where the difficult parts are not detours from the point, but are actually the point. Because they are what made you capable of the love you carry now. And I want to be someone who reads every page, who doesn't skim, who doesn't lose interest when it gets complicated, who stays up too late because I can't put you down. Yeah. That is what you are to me. That is what you have always been. Yeah. I want to tell you about the moment I realized something had shifted inside me. Although it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the kind of moment that announces itself with music and perfect lighting. It was quiet, the way the most important moments usually are. I was just sitting there thinking about nothing in particular, and then somehow I was thinking about you, about the specific way you exist in this world, about the particular shape of your kindness, and the particular weight of everything you carry. And something in my chest moved. Not metaphorically, actually moved. Like something that had been sitting in one place for a very long time finally found where it was supposed to be. And I sat with that feeling for a while, turning it over, examining it from different angles, the way you do when something feels important and you don't want to misname it. Because I've learned to be careful with feelings. I've learned that the ones that matter deserve more than a quick glance. They deserve your full attention, your full honesty. And so I gave it that. I sat with what I felt when I thought about you, and I asked myself, what is this really? And the answer that came back was so simple and so certain that it almost surprised me. Though, it was you. That's what it was, just you. Though, not a version of you. Not what you could become, or what you used to be, or what you look like when everything is going right. Just you, as you are, in the middle of your life, carrying everything you carry, being everything you are right now, in this exact, imperfect and magnificent moment. That is what moved something in me. That is what keeps moving something in me, every single time I let myself think about you, honestly. And I want to tell you what it feels like to think about you honestly, because I don't think anyone has ever described it to you in a way that let you really receive it. In a way that wasn't wrapped in conditions or expectations, or the subtle implication that the feeling was about them more than about you. So let me try. Let me try to give you this clearly and cleanly, the way you deserve to receive it. Todd, thinking about you honestly feels like standing in front of something vast. Something you can't quite take in all at once. The way you feel at the edge of the ocean when you look out, and the water just keeps going past the place where your eyes can follow it. And something inside you goes very quiet. Not because you're afraid, but because you are in the presence of something that is genuinely beyond you, and your whole body knows it. That's what it feels like. You are beyond me in a way that I find completely and totally beautiful. You are more than I could have anticipated, and I keep discovering new edges of that more. And every time I do, I feel something that is equal parts wonder and gratitude. Gratitude that you exist, that somewhere in the world, in whatever city you're in whatever season of your life you're currently living, you are out there being exactly who you are, making the world softer and more real, just by being in it. I am grateful for that, not in the polite, automatic way. In the specific, personal, I have thought about this carefully way. I am grateful that the world has you in it. I am grateful that I get to be one of the people who knows that. Oh, now I want to tell you something about love that I don't think gets said enough. Something I've been thinking about for a long time and have never found the right moment to say out loud until now. Oh, I know that sounds like something you embroider on a pillow, but stay with me for a second, because I mean it differently than it usually gets meant. What I mean is that love, real love, the kind worth keeping, is also a practice. It's something you do every day, in small ways, in moments that nobody's watching, in choices that don't feel heroic, but that are actually the most heroic thing there is. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I want you to understand what I mean when I say I want to love you. I don't mean I want to feel a feeling and then hand it to you and consider the transaction complete. I mean I want to practice you, daily, consistently, in the small moments that stack up over time into something so solid and so warm that you could lean your whole weight against it without fear. I want to practice noticing you, the way your mood shifts before you've said anything. The specific kind of quiet that means you're thinking something you haven't decided to say yet, versus the kind of quiet that means something is wrong. The particular things that light you up from the inside, not just the obvious ones, but the subtle ones. The ones you've maybe stopped mentioning because you weren't sure anyone was interested. I want to be so fluent in you that I catch things you didn't even know you were feeling yet. I want to practice choosing you, not just on the easy days. Not just when choosing you is the obvious thing, the comfortable thing, the thing that costs nothing. I want to practice choosing you on the days when everything is hard and the world is demanding too much and I'm tired in ways that go deeper than tired. I want to practice choosing you on those days especially, because that is where love either proves itself or doesn't. Not in the grand gestures, not in the perfect moments, but in the ordinary, unglamorous, nothing to post about moments where you show up anyway because you said you would, and because they matter, and because love is not a fair weather thing. 1. I want to practice being honest with you, the kind of honest that trusts you enough to say the real thing, that doesn't manage you or protect you from difficulty by keeping things soft and comfortable. The kind of honest that says, I'm scared right now, or I got that wrong and I'm sorry, or I need something from you that I haven't asked for yet because asking felt vulnerable. But here I am asking that honesty. I want to give you that because you deserve a love that respects your ability to handle real things. You are not fragile. You never were. And I want to love you in a way that knows that. I want to tell you about something that I think you've been waiting for without knowing you've been waiting for it. And it has to do with the way you've been loved before. Not to go back into old pain, I don't want to take you there, but because I think understanding something about the past might help you understand what I'm trying to give you now, and why it's different, and why it's real. The love you've been given before, most of it was conditional in ways that were never stated out loud. Nobody told you directly that their love had terms. Nobody handed you a document, but you felt it. In the way things shifted when you were too much or not enough. In the way warmth was available when you were easy and became scarce when you were complicated. In the way you learned gradually which parts of yourself were welcome and which parts you should keep in the quieter rooms of yourself where nobody would have to deal with them. With you learned to curate yourself for love. And I want you to understand how heartbreaking that is. Not because I pity you, I don't, not even a little, because you took something that could have made you closed and instead stayed open, and that is extraordinary, but because it means that for a long time, maybe a very long time, you were never fully seen. You were seen in the approved version, the version that had already passed through your own internal filter, the version you decided was presentable enough to offer, and something in you has been waiting underneath all of it, to be known without the filter. To walk into a love and not have to decide in advance which parts of you to bring. To just arrive whole, unedited, uncertain, and complicated, and fully yourself, and have someone look at all of it and say, yes, this, all of this. Bring all of this in. I am saying yes to all of it, right now, in this letter, in this moment, as directly and clearly as I know how.